tell your family's story at such a young age?
I didn't. I did not tell my family my story until 1967. Now it's true, my children were very young then. My son was 7 and my daughter was 5. She's 2 years younger. And in 67, I realized that there's something not right here. It's not working right. I should be able to answer their questions honestly. I should try to explain to them how the world works. I should not always be evasive and hiding. And it took me a very long time to come to that realization. But I found out later that I wasn't the only one who had trouble. Most could not tell their children their stories.
And they knew that you were a Holocaust survivor, or they didn't know?
My children, at that point, I don't think they knew what Holocaust means. Maybe they did. They were precocious children. They were bright. And I learned very recently from my daughter that when she was about that age, when apparently there was stuff going on because she got curious, especially when she walked in on my mother, her great-grandmother, and she saw her grandmother, right, her daughter's great-grandmother, when she saw my mother spit at the TV screen because Hitler's picture was on the screen. And she got very curious. And she said to her older brother, 7 years old, Jack, Nani spat at the TV because Adolf Hitler's picture was on the TV. Why? And Jack said, I don't know why, but I think you can find the answer here. And we had a house full of books. We still do. They're downstairs. And he picked up the volume called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, which is not for children. It's a difficult history book. And he gave it to her, and he said, I'm sure the answer is here. I just don't know what the answer is. He was about, maybe he was 8, 7, 8. Yeah, he was little. And she was 2 years younger. And he gave her that book. And when she told me not too long ago, she told me this story, we both laughed. But actually, it was a reflection of a very sad truth. We didn't talk about it. And the children didn't learn anything. But they learned, and they have children of their own, and thank God all is well.
How did you handle long periods of time without food or water when you were in the attic?
Badly. It's very hard to be hungry all the time. In the summer, thirst is a real killer. You kind of dry up. So, and our rescuer could not give us water because we were in a small village. We did not have a faucet and a sink in his house, so he had to put the pole on his shoulders and the buckets on the pole and go to the well and fill the buckets and bring it home to his house. And when my mother begged him, she said, it's so hot, we need more water, the children can't take it. And he said, well, I thought about it, he said, but I'll tell you, if I go to the well more times than I usually do, then my neighbors will begin to wonder, what's going on? Why does he need so much water suddenly? And somebody might get curious. And if you're found, we're all dead. Because by now, things were really tough. The Holocaust had begun. He was hiding Jews. That was not allowed. The penalty was death. So they would have killed him and his family and us. So when he got done saying this to my mother said, shh, forget it.
So you only got water when he came up to give you food? Or?
Well, he didn't, you see, he had a system. The system started in the very beginning. Once he took us up to his attic, he would, we lay there. There was nothing to do. It was dark. It was awful. The cracks in the wall of the attic were the source of life and light. So we would all have a crack in the wall, and we would look out, and we would see kids playing, and trees and flowers, and that was our entertainment. When we did this, the great fear was that someone might spot us through these cracks. We saw them, they might see us too. But we risked it, and we couldn't resist the temptation, and we did this. Now, we were very lucky. Nobody spotted us. And he did not come up the entire day. He did not open the attic door for fear that he had 4 children, and he was afraid one of them will follow him upstairs and see what's going on and blab it all over, because that's what children do. And so he didn't do that. When his family was asleep, he brought the ladder back. He didn't leave it there because he was afraid the kids would climb up. So he brought the ladder back, put it in position, climbed up, opened up the attic, the trap door, and once the door was open, he took down the toilet. Our toilet was buckets, and he took down the buckets one by one, washed them, brought them back. And then when he was finished with that task, he brought a pot of boiled beans and potatoes. And we counted the beans for each person, the same amount, even if you were a grown-up and a child, each got the same amount. And that was our diet. And it was a starvation diet. But it couldn't be helped. We were, in the beginning, my family was 6, because we were then 4 sisters. And my aunt and uncle were with us, and they had 3 children. So we had 2 sets of parents, 4 adults, and we had 4 children, and they had 7 children. But then one night he whispered to my mother that he knows where her 4 single brothers are still alive. He kept count of who was getting killed and who was still alive. My mother had a family of 10 brothers and sisters. And he said, 4 of them are alive, living in the forest. And my mother said, in the forest? In this cold? Please, doctor, you must bring them here. And so my mother's begging paid off, because he resisted for quite a number of days. But then he gave in, and he went to the forest and got my uncles. It was a very great risk, but he took the chance, because my mother, who was a believer, said to him, Stasha, don't be afraid. God is with you. You are saving lives, and God will protect you for that. So don't be afraid. They won't catch you. And he was a believer, but he was Catholic. We were Jews, he was Catholic, but he believed that he had such faith, as my mother did. And he brought my uncles. He had 15 Jewish people in his attic. And food was very hard to get. In the war, food is next to impossible to get. Everybody's afraid and saves whatever they have, and you can't buy more because there's no transportation. There's nothing. War is a terrible, terrible thing. In my opinion, the only thing worse than war is if you can't defend yourself, because that paralyzes you. We were members of a small community. Jews were a very, very small minority. 10% of Polish population were Jews. And that's not very many. Imagine for every Jewish child there are 10 Catholics. So he every night did this thing and then locked us up again, and the next day we were silent all the time, waiting for night when the same thing happened again and again. And it wasn't just weeks or months or seasons. It was 2 whole years we were up in that house.
When you were in the attic, did you celebrate holidays?
Yes. My father had an extraordinary memory, and he knew, even without a calendar, maybe he made mistakes that we didn't know, but he knew just about the right time when the high holy days were, and he would fast on Yom Kippur, and his little bit of food would wait till the fast was over. On Pesach, sometimes we got a little piece of bread with beans and potatoes. My father would not eat his bread on Pesach. He lit Hanukkah candles. How did he do that? He asked our host to give him potatoes, raw potatoes. And he cut them in half, and he made a little hole, and put a drop of, he asked for a drop of oil, put a drop of oil each night more, and then when the 8 days were over, he took these half potatoes and gave them to him to cook, so we could have a little more potatoes.
Like in the attic, did you ever lose hope or forget about Judaism?
It's very hard to forget about Judaism when everybody's looking to kill you because you're Jewish.
But did you ever lose hope?
Yeah. There were times when I know that the adults considered giving up because it was too hard. But you see, even though the situation looks very, very hopeless, the desire to live is strong, and so you wait another day, you wait another day. It's never too late to give up. But yes, that feeling was with us, yes.
Did you ever feel like the war was just going to go on forever?
Well, I might have felt that way, except that we whispered to each other, and my father was convinced that no war has ever gone on forever. Eventually, wars end. Of course, for the Jewish community, it was too late. Most of European Jews died. 6 million. That was the majority of the European Jews. 1.5 million of those 6 were children. In other words, the whole generation was wiped out. So it was a hard thing to accept. You can't do anything. When this is what the world is doing, and you have no defense, you suffer. We got lucky. Many times we got lucky.
Every time the trap door opened, what was your reaction? Were you nervous, excited?
We were waiting impatiently for him to open that door and to do his thing. We didn't talk. Nobody talked. My mother would whisper to him and he would whisper back. But there were no conversations because the silence was the important issue.
Did you ever hear a Nazi under you?
One day, we were looking out through our cracks in the wall, and we looked at each other. There wasn't much light there. The only light was from cracks, which means it's spotty light. But we realized that we all saw Germans walking, and they were walking in our direction, and they were coming closer and closer, and we felt panic-stricken, absolutely. And then they came to the house, not into, but to the house, and Mrs. Grocholski, the wife, went out to greet them, and she spoke only Polish, nothing else. And they spoke only German, nothing else. They didn't understand each other at all. But we understood because we spoke Yiddish. And Yiddish is medieval German. When the Jews fled from defeat far, far away in the Middle East by the ancient Romans, and they wound up in German-speaking communities, they took that language and learned it as best as they could. It wasn't school learning, but they picked it up, and they called it Yiddish. And now it came in very handy, because we heard that they were telling Mrs. Grocholski something about clearing the snow from the path. We couldn't visualize because we didn't see what they were pointing to, but she didn't understand, and she babbled on in German, and it had nothing to do with what they were saying, and they gave up and went away. So that was our closest contact with death, and it's very frightening. For me, it was very frightening, because I didn't want to die.
How were you able to stay so quiet in the attic?
You have to. When you have to, you do it. I was the oldest child of my 3 cousins and my 3 sisters. I was the oldest, and I remember distinctly that all you had to do was this: put your finger on your lips, which told everybody, even the little tiny children, that you must be quiet. And they were always quiet, no problem. Children learn when they have to.
Before Stanislav found you, what was it like constantly being on the run from field to field every night?
Tough. As long as the weather was good. See, when we left home in August of 42, it was sunny and warm and comfortable, and it was livable. But it doesn't remain that way. The seasons come and go, and we began to feel the real discomfort of being on the run in bad conditions. It's not good. It's hard.
Was there ever like a farmer that found you in their field that was nice to you, or they were all mean?
We didn't connect. We stayed hidden in the heaps of hay or straw or whatever. They had all kinds of grains, but I called them all heaps of hay. And we stayed hidden all day. We came out after the farmers went home to rest, because then nobody's there. We owned the fields at night, and that's when we got out, took off, walked to the next field. We never stayed in the field more than one night, because we were afraid that if we're noticed, they'll begin to put the story together and they'll catch us. See, they had lists of Jews they were looking for, because in my town, in my region, there weren't that many people, and they had all the lists, and they crossed off whom they caught, and we were still on the list, so they kept looking, and happily they didn't find us. We were lucky.
Was there ever a farmer that saw you? Or?
No. The only farmer that persisted in looking for us was Mr. Groholsky, the man who finally saved us. He went looking for us. He recognized when people gossiped about so-and-so saw such and such, he put the thing together. And he said, those are my Jews. And he went looking for us at night. And he whistled as he walked at night. And that's how he found us.
When you came to America, what was life like?
Immigrants have a very tough time. It's not easy. For kids, I was 13 when we came. I had 2 days of school. And then the war interfered, and school was over, and I never learned to read and write. I didn't learn anything. So, and the others were worse off than I. Nobody learned anything. And we started school on the level that we should have been in. For example, you're 13. Have you been bar mitzvah?
Yeah.
When I came here, I was 13. And I went to school because my uncle brought us to America. And my aunt said she had been a school teacher, so she was very committed to school. And she said, the children have to go to school tomorrow morning. That was the next morning after we arrived. And I wasn't pleased at all because I had those 2 days in Europe at school and they were terrible days. Nevertheless, my aunt said so, and we were very good children in that we knew we had to obey. It's for our own good and we have to obey. So we wound up going to school, and they put us on our level. So I was put in the 8th grade, and I didn't know a damn thing. Nothing. But the teachers said not to worry. You will learn very quickly. And they each helped. The teachers were wonderful. They gave us time. They were patient with us. And they kept encouraging us. So we didn't feel stupid. We felt like we have to catch up. It's okay. And we went and we caught up. And we made a rather quick adjustment. After 3 months, we were able to babble in English, not speak, but babble. And we were adjusting very, very well. For older people, for my parents, it was much harder.
So at what age were you able to speak English like you are now?
Like I am now? Oh, that takes time. Because first of all, you sound different. Even if you say the English words, they come out sounding different. So it's a battle. But I would say that within 5 years, I spoke well. I had an accent at the age of 5 and 13, would have been 18. I still had an accent. And by the time I was 22, I had graduated college. And I wanted to be a teacher. And I took the teacher's exam, and in those days they were very strict. And I failed the speech test because I had this problem with pronunciation. And I didn't want to give up, so I looked for help. And I found that I could pay a speech therapist to help me get rid of the accent so I could pass the teacher's exam. And it worked. By the time I was 20, the second time I took the exam, I'm not sure how old I was, 23, 24, I passed and I became a teacher. And I taught for 33 years at Fort Hampton High School in Bay Ridge. Have you ever heard of the school?
Yeah.
You see it from the Belt Parkway. It's a beautiful school. I taught there for 33 years.
How was life in America different from when you were in Poland?
Oh, everything was different. In Poland was a backward country, a poor country. The times were very, very backward. We didn't have radio. My father did buy a radio, but it was mostly static because the waves were not equipped to give clear rendering of what they were doing. It was, for Poland, that was the beginning of radio. And it wasn't a very good beginning. I remember everybody was sitting and listening very hard, and they got the static. But I think that's what I found most difficult to accept when I realized that the rest of the world knew a lot more about what was going on than we did. We didn't understand what we were heading for, and that it would take a great deal for us to come out alive. I didn't understand that. Maybe that was a good thing, because if you understood, you might have been desperate and given up. I never felt that I needed to give up. I felt that, yes, we would get through it. The war will end. My father said so. No war ever went on forever. My father said so. It'll end and everything will be fine. It ended. But it wasn't fine. There was no Jewish community. Today in Poland, there are a few Jews here and there, but they hide the fact that they're Jews. Even today, they hide that fact. So the Jewish community was gone. Had there not been a Jewish community in America then, I think we would have fallen through the cracks. There were too many of us missing, and it wasn't going to work out. But America had a small, but strong Jewish community. And they sort of re-energized it. There was no Israel then. So from where would this effort to glue us together come? Only America.
When you visited back to Poland after you came to America, the book said that on your house was painted a swastika and a kid came down riding his bike saying "Hail Hitler." What was your reaction to that?
Anger. I thought to myself, what's wrong with you? Don't you people ever learn anything? And when I see the beginning of anti-Semitism, like other hatreds, is ignorance. And I realized that this kid on the bike who said Heil Hitler, he didn't know what he was talking about. Poland was badly hurt by that war. Very badly hurt, and he was saying Heil Hitler because no one taught him better. I think that the entire world at the end was very shocked at what happened and couldn't get started to face it. They kind of like the Jewish survivors, they wanted to forget about it. It was painful. It was hurt everybody. So we were quiet for a very long time. And I was among the quiet people. And now, no more quiet. Silence is not what it's cracked up to be.
What was your reaction when you found out that she was dead? What was the reaction difference from when you found out what actually happened to her and what happened, and when you thought what happened to her?
We thought she was surviving. We didn't know that it was too late. See, we get to a point where we can't be saved. And Faggy had gotten to that point, and that's why my parents did what they did. They tried to save her by giving her away. And they left her on the doorstep of the priest's residence, and he tried to save her. My parents knew that he was smart, and they knew he'd figure out a way. And he got a young couple and gave the baby to them, and they tried to save her, and she died. And we thought she was surviving. We thought we're going home to claim Faggy, but Faggy was gone. And it's sad. It's very, very sad. I wish she had lived.
How were your parents able to get her to the doorstep?
They put her in a basket. She was very little. I think she was no more than 2 years old, I think. And they covered her up, and they left her sleeping on the doorstep. And they knew that priest would figure out what happened.
How were they able to get it to the doorstep if you guys couldn't leave the attic?
They went at night. They got down from the attic, and they went. In spite of the fact that it was not safe, we took great risks. We had to. My father used to go when he was able to. See, after 2 years he couldn't. He didn't have the strength. None of us could walk. But in the beginning, he used to go down at night and used to go to his acquaintances who were Catholic, with whom he did business, and used to beg for help and then return. What do you call the chicken that is, it's a male chicken?
Rooster?
The rooster. I heard the rooster sound, even though it was the sun was almost coming up, and I thought, oh my God, my father's not coming back. My father was caught, my father will be shot. I was so distressed. And then I heard the rooster, and I said, oh, the town is going to wake up, and even if my father's alive, they'll see him and they'll kill him. And my father arrived because we were lucky. And he lost his way. You know, farm homes, farm towns don't have addresses and such. One little town is this, and the next little town is that. And my father was able to find his way back every night. Even that night, he found his way back. So he had a wonderful sense of direction, because you have no address and there are no milestones. There's no pink house or tall house or anything, because they're all little tiny houses. And one place looks like the other. But my father was always able to find his way back. And then he couldn't do it anymore because he didn't have the energy. So at first he brought a little this and that, you know, some bread, some potatoes for our hosts to cook, because they had food was rationed. This family of 4 children and parents, our hosts, got their ration. You couldn't get more. How was food for 6 going to supply 15 Jews upstairs also? It was a deathly program. And we were slowly dying, and we lost my sister Faggy. We lost my little cousin because they were little and not strong enough. And then my cousin's mother died, because when you have a war, you have casualties. And some of these casualties are strong, able people, robust, doers. And my aunt was that kind of person. Casualty